This man has a gorgeous house. He has beautiful babies. He has a beautiful wife. He has an awesome job. Like, why would he want to leave this? And I remember talking to him about it, and that was the first time that I tried to actually say, what do you think about not separating from your wife? Like, what if you really try to work on this? And he had expressed to me that we've tried to work on this and it's not working, so that is why we're separating.
In 2018, the world watched a monster confess to the unthinkable, Chris Watts. 3 innocent lives, a case that seemed closed. But in 2026, leaked letters from inside Dodge Correctional Institution are telling a different story. A story about manipulation, about evidence that was buried, and about a woman who walked free while the system looked the other way. This is True Crime Footnotes, and I'm an unsolved case analyst. What you're about to hear took me 8 months to compile. Thousands of pages of FBI reports, prison correspondence that was never meant to see the light of day, and a cell tower ping that proves someone was lying about where they were the morning those girls disappeared. This isn't the story you think you know. This is the story they didn't want you to hear. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand why the Chris Watts case was never really solved. It was just silenced. Stay with me, because what I found will shake you to your core. Before we go any further, I need you to understand why I do this, why I spend sleepless nights combing through court documents that cost me hundreds of dollars just to access, why I fight through prison bureaucracy and pay for records that most people will never see. When I was growing up, I lost both of my parents to a violent crime. To this day, their case remains unsolved. To this day, the people responsible walk free. To this day, my parents have no justice. That pain, that emptiness, it never leaves you. It becomes part of your DNA. And every time I see a case like this, where the system closes the book too fast, where the powerful protect the guilty, where families are left with questions instead of answers, it triggers something deep inside me. I became an unsolved case analyst because I refused to let what happened to my family happen to others. I refuse to accept that justice has an expiration date. I refuse to stay silent when I see the truth being buried. So when I started digging into the Watts case and saw how quickly Nichol Kessinger was granted immunity, how her digital trail was ignored, how the prosecutors settled for a partial truth, I couldn't walk away. Because somewhere out there, Shannon's family is living with the same questions I've carried my entire life. If you've lost someone to violence, if you've watched the system fail the people you love, type "Amen to my parents" in the comments. Let's honor every victim who's still waiting for their day in court. Because this video, this investigation, it's for them. Now let's get into what they don't want you to know. Real quick before we continue, this investigation cost me over $2,000 in prison records, court documents, and forensic reports. I spent 8 months on this because I believe the truth matters more than convenience. If you appreciate deep dive investigations like this, if you want to support real journalism that doesn't back down, hit that subscribe button right now. Tap the notification bell, and if this video moves you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. That's how we hold the powerful accountable. That's how we get justice for the forgotten. All right, let's talk about the player everyone forgot about. When the media covered the Watts case in 2018, Nichol Kessinger was portrayed as a tragic figure, the other woman, the mistress who was deceived, a victim of Chris Watts's lies. But when you actually read the FBI's digital forensic reports, when you line up her testimony against her phone records, that image crumbles like ash. Nichol Kessinger wasn't some random woman who stumbled into a whirlwind affair. She was hunting, and she'd been hunting for over a year before the murders ever happened. According to the discovery files, Kessinger started searching for Shannon Watts online as early as September 2017. Let that sink in. September 2017, nearly a full year before Chris ever claims he told her his marriage was over.
She was digging through Shannon's Facebook, looking at photos of the girls, studying their family vacations, their life. Now ask yourself this: if you're just casually dating someone at work, why are you spending hours deep diving into his wife's social media a year before he even mentions divorce? That's not curiosity, that's obsession, that's premeditation. But it gets darker. In early 2018, while Shannon was pregnant with Nico, Kessinger's search history shows phrases like "man having an affair" and "how to prepare for a new life." She wasn't being lied to. She knew exactly what she was doing. She was preparing for a future that required Shannon to disappear. And here's the part that made my blood run cold. Kessinger worked for a contractor at Anadarko Petroleum, the exact same company Chris worked for, the exact same company that owned the remote oil site where the bodies were hidden. She had access to the GPS coordinates. She knew the layouts. She understood how isolated those tanks were. So when Chris Watts claims in his 2024 letters that everything was manipulated, we have to ask ourselves, who had the knowledge? Who had the motive? Who had the technical skill to navigate a crime scene in the dark? The answer is sitting right there in the digital evidence, but the prosecutors didn't want to see it, because seeing it would mean admitting they let the architect walk free. Pause this video right now and tell me in the comments, do you think Nichol Kessinger was just a mistress, or was she something far more dangerous? I need to know what you're thinking, because this is where the case starts to unravel. Let me take you into the wires, into the data, into the evidence that the system treated like background noise.
On August 13, 2018, at 6:16 in the morning, Nichol Kessinger's cell phone pinged a tower in Frederick, Colorado, not in North Glen where she lived. Frederick, the town where the Watts family lived, the town where Shannon and the girls were last seen alive. Now, North Glen to Frederick is a 25-minute drive. Kessinger told investigators she was at home that morning, getting ready for work. But her phone tells a different story. Because a cell phone doesn't lie about its location. It pings the closest tower. And at 6:16 a.m., the closest tower to her phone was in Frederick. So the question becomes, what was she doing there? Was she watching the house? Was she waiting for a signal? Was she making sure the plan was going according to script? The FBI had this data. The prosecutors had this data, and they did nothing with it. They treated it like a glitch, like an anomaly. But I've worked with cell tower evidence before. There are no glitches at 6:16 in the morning. There's only the truth. And the truth is, someone was lying about where they were when those girls were being taken from their beds. But the digital trail doesn't stop there. Before Nichol Kessinger ever walked into a police station, she was busy. She wiped her entire call log with Chris Watts. Every single text message deleted. Her search history scrubbed clean. And this wasn't panic. This was precision. According to the discovery files, she spent hours going through her phone, erasing any trace of their communication. Now, if you're truly an innocent victim who just found out your boyfriend's family is missing, your first instinct isn't to destroy evidence. Your first instinct is to help find them. But Kessinger wasn't helping. She was cleaning. And here's where it gets even more chilling. Her Google search history from August 13th shows searches like, can police see deleted text messages? And how long do phone companies keep records? These aren't the searches of a woman in shock. These are the searches of someone checking the perimeter of the law before stepping inside it. She knew exactly what she was doing. She knew that if she deleted it fast enough, if she controlled the narrative from the beginning, she could walk away untouched. And she was right. Because by the time she sat down with detectives, she had already curated the evidence. She gave them just enough to look cooperative, just enough to redirect their focus back to Chris, and just enough to secure her immunity. The FBI recovered fragments of those deleted files. They found the searches. They found the timeline. But the prosecutors chose to ignore it. They chose to treat her like a star witness instead of a suspect. And in doing so, they let the person who understood the crime scene better than anyone slip through the cracks. I want you to drop a red flag emoji in the comments if you think that 6:16 a.m. cell tower ping is the smoking gun this case needed, because to me, it's the most honest witness we have. You know what keeps me going through nights like this? Knowing that there are people like you who care about the truth. People who don't just scroll past injustice. People who demand answers even when the system says the case is closed. If you're one of those people, I'm building something here. A community of truth seekers. And every time you engage with this content, every time you share it, every time you subscribe, you're telling the algorithm that this matters, that these voices matter. Don't underestimate your power. Now let me show you what happened in the first 48 hours, because while the world was watching Chris Watts fall apart on that front porch, Nichol Kessinger was executing a plan. August 13th, 2018, Shannon Watts is reported missing. Her two daughters, Bella and Celeste, gone. The media descends on the small town of Frederick, and the world watches a man named Chris Watts beg for his family's safe return. But while everyone's eyes were on him, Nichol Kessinger was in the shadows, moving with surgical precision. Before she contacted the police, before she agreed to cooperate, she had already deleted every trace of her communication with Chris. The call logs, the messages, the photos, everything. And then she went even further. She deleted her SIM card data and swapped it out entirely. Now think about that for a second. A woman who claims she just found out her boyfriend might be involved in something terrible doesn't preserve evidence to help the investigation. She destroys it. That's not the behavior of a victim. That's the behavior of someone who knows exactly what's on that phone and knows it can't see the light of day. But she didn't stop there. According to Chris Watts's 2024 letters that were never meant to be leaked, Kessinger called him the morning of August 13th, and she gave him instructions. Delete your Facebook, get rid of the apps, clean your digital footprint. Chris describes her voice as calm, almost robotic, like she was reading from a manual. He says she told him exactly what to say to the police, exactly how to act, exactly how to play the role of the panicked husband. And if he followed the script, she promised, they'd find each other again when the dust settled. Now I know what you're thinking. Can we trust anything Chris Watts says? Fair question. But here's the thing. His description of those phone calls lines up perfectly with Kessinger's own behavior. She was managing the fallout before there was even a crime to manage. She was 3 steps ahead of the investigation from the very beginning. And when she finally sat down with detectives, she didn't go alone. Her father, Dwayne Kessinger, was right there beside her. And not just as emotional support. He was steering the conversation, answering for her, redirecting questions when they got too pointed. It was like watching a corporate lawyer handle a deposition, not a witness helping solve a missing person case. The detectives let it happen. They let her control the room. They let her father act as a buffer, and they let her walk out of that interview with immunity, even though her story changed every single time they confronted her with new evidence. When they asked her if she knew Shannon was pregnant, she said no. But her phone records show she spent over an hour on Shannon's Instagram, which was filled with ultrasound photos and pregnancy announcements. When they asked about her search history, she claimed she was just curious, but the timestamps show she was searching for Shannon long before Chris ever mentioned her. Every answer was a deflection, every explanation was rehearsed, and the prosecutors ate it up, because they needed her testimony to secure Chris's confession, and they were willing to overlook everything, the lies, the deleted evidence, the cell tower ping, to get it. So while the world mourned the loss of Shannon, Bella, and Celeste, Nichol Kessinger was orchestrating her escape, and she did it so well that by the time the case was closed, she had a new name, a new life, and a clean slate. Tell me in the comments, does this sound like a victim to you, or does this sound like someone who knew exactly how to play the game?
Now, I need to warn you, what I'm about to share is going to make you angry. It's going to make you question everything about how this case was handled. Because while the rest of the world was grieving, while Shannon's family was planning 3 funerals, Nichol Kessinger was thinking about her future. On August 19, 2018, just days after the bodies were discovered, Kessinger's search history shows something that still makes my stomach turn. She wasn't searching for how to process trauma. She wasn't searching for grief counseling. She wasn't even searching for updates on the case. She was searching for Amber Frey. You remember Amber Frey, the mistress of Scott Peterson, the man who was convicted for the murder of his pregnant wife Lacey Peterson back in 2002? Amber Frey became famous. She wrote a book, she did interviews, she made money off her story. And Nichol Kessinger wanted to know exactly how much. According to the FBI's forensic report, her searches included how much money did Amber Frey make, Amber Frey book deal, and did people like Amber Frey? She was analyzing the public perception of a famous mistress while the bodies of Bella and Celeste were barely out of the oil tanks. But it gets worse. She also searched for brand ambassador opportunities and how to become a brand ambassador. She was already thinking about how to monetize her role in this tragedy, how to turn her proximity to horror into a career. Let me say that again. While Shannon's family was identifying her body, Nichol Kessinger was Googling book deals. Now, if that doesn't tell you who this person is, I don't know what will. This wasn't a woman in shock. This wasn't a woman consumed by guilt or grief. This was a woman calculating her next move, and her next move was fame. The DA's office was under immense pressure. The media was relentless. The public was demanding answers. And the Ruzek family, Shannon's family, they just wanted it to be over. They couldn't bear the thought of a trial. They couldn't stomach the idea of seeing crime scene photos in open court. They wanted Chris Watts to plead guilty and spend the rest of his life in prison. And the DA knew that to get that plea deal, they needed Nichol Kessinger to testify that Chris acted alone, that she had no knowledge of his plans, that she was just a woman who fell for the wrong man. So they made her an offer, full immunity in exchange for her testimony. No charges, no scrutiny, no uncomfortable questions about why her phone was in Frederick at 6:16 in the morning. Just a clean exit and a new life. And she took it. Of course she took it, because the alternative was standing trial as a potential accomplice, and the evidence, circumstantial as it was, would have destroyed her in front of a jury.
But here's what bothers me. The DA had a responsibility to pursue the truth, not just a conviction. They had a responsibility to investigate every lead, every inconsistency, every digital breadcrumb. And they didn't. They traded the full truth for efficiency. They looked at Nichol Kessinger and saw a liability, a complication, someone who would make the case messy and drawn out. So they removed her from the equation entirely. And in doing so, they sent a message to every future criminal. If you're smart enough, if you're calculated enough, if you know how to play the victim, you can walk away. Now, I've spent 8 months trying to get answers from the Weld County DA's office. I've filed public records requests, I've reached out to the investigators who worked the case, and every single time I hit a wall. The case is closed, the records are sealed. Nichol Kessinger's immunity agreement is confidential. Convenient, isn't it? The one document that would explain why she was protected, why her evidence was ignored, why the prosecution looked the other way, that's the one document we're not allowed to see. But I'm not done digging, because the families of victims deserve more than a bureaucratic runaround. They deserve to know why the system prioritized convenience over justice. They deserve to know why a woman who was Googling book deals while their loved ones were being identified got to walk free. And so do you. Because this isn't just about the Watts case. This is about a broken system that values optics over accountability. And if we don't demand better, if we don't hold these institutions to a higher standard, this will keep happening. Type "reopen the case" in the comments if you think the Weld County DA owes the public an explanation, because silence is complicity.
and I refuse to be silent. So where does that leave us now? It's 2026. 8 years have passed since Shannon, Bella, and Celeste were taken from this world. 8 years since Chris Watts was sentenced to life. 8 years since Nichol Kessinger disappeared. But something has changed. Chris Watts is talking, and what he's saying is turning the entire narrative upside down. In 2024 and 2025, a series of letters written by Chris Watts from inside Dodge Correctional Institution were leaked to independent journalists. I paid a significant amount of money to verify their authenticity, and they're real. These are his words, his thoughts, his version of events. And in these letters, Chris Watts uses one word over and over again: manipulated. He describes Nichol Kessinger not as a victim, but as the architect. He claims she exploited his psychological weaknesses, that she isolated him from his family, that she made him feel like his daughters were anchors dragging him down from the life he deserved. He describes phone calls where she would whisper about their future together, a future where his baggage no longer existed, a future where they could start fresh. And every time he hesitated, every time he expressed doubt, she would pull away. She would go cold. She would make him feel like he was losing the only person who truly understood him. It's textbook manipulation, and according to Chris, it worked. He also reveals something that law enforcement never disclosed. He claims that Nichol knew about his plan before it happened, that she helped him map out the logistics, that she was the one who suggested the oil site because she knew how remote it was, how unlikely it was that anyone would find the bodies quickly. Now, I know what you're thinking. Can we believe a man who committed such a horrific crime? Can we trust the words of someone who has every reason to shift blame? Those are valid questions, but here's what I keep coming back to. His description of Nichols' behavior matches the digital evidence, the deleted texts, the scrubbed call logs, the searches about police recovering data, the 6:16 a.m. cell tower ping. If Chris is lying, he's lying in a way that perfectly aligns with evidence the FBI already had, and that seems unlikely. What's more likely is that he's finally telling the truth, not because he's seeking redemption, but because he's angry. Angry that he's rotting in a cell while the woman he claims orchestrated the whole thing is living under a new name, with a new life, free. And maybe, just maybe, that anger is finally cracking the silence that's protected her for 8 years. Chris Watts will never see freedom again, and he shouldn't. What he did was unforgivable. But if there's even a chance that he didn't act alone, if there's even a possibility that someone else was pulling the strings, don't we owe it to Shannon, Bella, and Celeste to find out? Don't we owe it to every victim of a broken system that values convenience over truth to keep digging? I think we do. And that's why I'm not letting this go. You know, people ask me all the time why I keep doing this, why I pour my heart and my resources into cases that most people think are already solved. And the answer is simple. Because no one else will. Because the system moves on, the media moves on, but the families, they never get to move on. They live with the questions every single day. So if you believe this work matters, if you believe the truth is worth the fight, I need you to spread this video. Share it with someone who cares about justice. Share it with someone who refuses to accept the easy answers. Because that's how we create change. One view at a time, one share at a time, one voice at a time. Now let me bring this home. So here we are, 2026, 8 years after the world watched the Watts case close, 8 years after Nichol Kessinger was given immunity and a new identity, 8 years after Shannon, Bella, and Celeste were laid to rest. And yet, the questions remain. Why was Kessinger's cell phone in Frederick at 6:16 in the morning? Why did she delete all her messages before contacting police? Why was she searching for book deals while the bodies were being recovered? And why did the district attorney give her a free pass when the evidence was screaming for further investigation? The official answer is that Chris Watts acted alone, that he was a monster who snapped, that Nichol Kessinger was just an unfortunate bystander who got caught in the wreckage. But the evidence tells a different story. The digital forensics, the cell tower pings, the deleted data, the leaked letters, they all point to a truth that the system wasn't willing to confront. That sometimes the person holding the script is more dangerous than the person holding the weapon. I started this investigation because I believe justice shouldn't have an expiration date. I started it because I know what it's like to lose someone and watch the system fail them. I started it because I refuse to let the powerful silence the truth. And what I found is that the Chris Watts case was never really solved. It was buried. The uncomfortable questions were swept under the rug, the inconvenient evidence was ignored, and the person who might have been the architect of it all was given a golden ticket to disappear. But here's the thing about the truth. It doesn't stay buried forever. It leaks, it cracks, it finds its way to the surface, and when it does, the people who tried to bury it are forced to answer for what they did. Nichol Kessinger is out there right now, living under a new name. Maybe she's moved on. Maybe she's convinced herself that she did nothing wrong. Maybe she sleeps soundly at night. But I'm not moving on, and I don't think you should either. Because Shannon Watts deserves better than a half-truth. Bella and Celeste deserve better than a rush to judgment. And every victim of a broken system deserves people who refuse to stop asking questions. So I'm asking you right now to do something. Share this video, tag your friends, tag your family, tag anyone who believes that justice shouldn't be negotiable. Because the more people who see this, the harder it becomes for the system to keep ignoring the gaps. And if you're someone with access to sealed records, if you're someone inside law enforcement who knows there's more to this story, reach out. You can do it anonymously, you can do it through encrypted channels, but please do it. Because the truth is more important than protecting a broken deal. I'll be here, digging, researching, fighting, because that's what I do. That's what my parents deserve. That's what every unsolved case deserves. And I'll see you in the next investigation, because this is just the beginning. If you made it this far, if you stayed with me through every twist, every piece of evidence, every uncomfortable truth, thank you. Type, "I stand for justice" in the comments. Let me know you're with me. Let me know this matters. And remember, the truth doesn't care about being convenient. It only cares about being told. Stay vigilant, stay loud, and never stop demanding answers. This is True Crime Footnotes, signing off.